This is crazy HOA life. The screenshot proved more than her yelling ever could. "I do not care what management promised you," Sharon shouted, stabbing her finger at the portable folder organizer she always dragged into every confrontation. "The past incident was settled, and I do not want it reopened." Her voice cracked on the last word, and that was when I knew for sure. If she did not want it reopened, I was going to reopen it. I stood on my driveway in Duluth, Minnesota, keys on a carabiner clipped to my belt, staring at the woman who ran the Ironwood Trails Village Association election committee like a mafia boss. Sharon Evans. Pixie cut, blue windbreaker, gray sun hat pulled low, and a tiny body camera clipped to her jacket like she was about to arrest me. She waved a printed notice in my face. "You owe a reinspection fee for last month, $200. Due in 3 days or we tow your car." I blinked. What reinspection? I work warehouse inventory control. I track every item and timestamp. There was no inspection last month. Sharon snapped the folder open and pulled out a carbon copy form with a date scrawled at the top. "Right here, October 9th. You were cited for improper landscaping edging." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the edging had been compliant for 6 months, and October 9th was a Sunday when I was at my sister's place 3 hours away. "I have receipts," I said. Sharon smiled, the kind of smile that meant she had done this before and won. "Receipts do not matter." "The inspection happened. The fee is valid. Pay or we tow. I have all day, and so does my fine meter." I took a breath. I had just buried my uncle 2 weeks earlier. The last thing I needed was another layer of chaos. But Sharon was not going to let me grieve in peace. She tapped the folder again. "This is not negotiable." The cloudy sky overhead rumbled, threatening rain, and I felt the weight of the moment. This was not just about $200. This was about a pattern. I had heard whispers in the neighborhood about old cases that never made sense. Missing money, staged violations, forged paperwork, suspicious towing, altered minutes, people who fought back and lost, people who gave up and moved. Sharon turned to leave, and I said, "I want to see the original inspection report." She froze. "That is not how this works." "Yes, it is," I said. "Every inspection generates a time-stamped report. Show me the report." Sharon spun around, and her face went red. "You do not get to demand records. I am the election committee chair. I oversee compliance proxies and ballots. I know the rules. You pay, or you lose your car." Then she leaned in close. "I can fine you daily until you give up and you cry." I stayed polite, because polite makes bullies careless. I said, "I will look into it." Sharon smirked and walked away, dragging her folder like a briefcase full of evidence. I pulled out my phone and opened my calendar. October 9th. I had clocked in at my sister's place for a family dinner at 2 in the afternoon. No way an inspector was at my house that day. I scrolled through my email. Nothing from the HOA about an inspection. Nothing from management. I checked the neighborhood portal. No inspection scheduled. No report uploaded. I texted my neighbor Paul, who lived 2 doors down. "Did you see an inspector here last month?" Paul replied in 30 seconds. "No." "But Sharon was here twice that week with her clipboard. She was taking pictures of your driveway." I felt my stomach tighten. She had been here, but no inspector had. Sharon was faking inspections. I drove to the management office the next morning. It was a small storefront in a strip mall off Central Entrance, gray carpet and fluorescent lights. The receptionist, a woman named Linda, looked up when I walked in. "I need to see the inspection report for my address." October 9th. Linda typed into her computer, frowned, and typed again. "There is no inspection report for that date." "Are you sure?" "Positive," I said. I was cited for landscaping edging. Linda clicked through a few more screens. I see a citation, but no linked report. That is odd. She printed the citation and handed it to me. The date was October 9th, but the inspector field was blank. The timestamp said the citation was created October 7th, 2 days before the alleged inspection. I pointed at the screen. Can you print the audit log for this citation? Linda hesitated. That is a restricted report. I can request it from corporate, but it takes a few days. I nodded. Please do, and I want a copy of the management contract. Linda raised an eyebrow. Why? Because I want to see who has authority to issue fines without an inspection. Linda printed the contract and slid it across the counter. I scanned the cover page. The contract was dated 3 years ago. I flipped to the signature page. The HOA president's signature was missing. I looked up. This contract was never signed? Linda leaned over and squinted. Oh, that is a problem. I walked out of the office with an unsigned contract, a citation with no inspector, and a growing suspicion that Sharon had been running a fraud scheme for years. I called my friend Jason, a real estate agent who had warned me about HOA liens when I bought the place. Jason, I need advice. What happens if an HOA fines you under a contract that was never properly renewed? Jason paused. If the contract is not valid, the fines are not valid. But you would need to prove the contract lapsed. I just did, I said. The signature page is blank. Management never executed the renewal. Jason whistled. That is a lawsuit waiting to happen. If Sharon has been issuing fines under an invalid contract, every fine she issued in the last 3 years is void. I felt a rush of adrenaline. How many people had she done this to? How much money had she collected? I need to find out who else got hit, I said. Jason agreed to help. We are going to need records. Lots of records. I spent the next 2 days digging. I filed a records request with the HOA for all citations issued in the past 3 years. Sharon responded with a 2-line email. Records requests require board approval. Submit your request in writing at the next meeting. The next meeting was 3 weeks away. I did not have 3 weeks. My car was needed for a strict work shift schedule, and a tow threat could get me fired if I missed a delivery window. I could not wait. I drove back to the management office and asked Linda if I could review the HOA files in person. Linda looked nervous. Sharon said no one is allowed to review files without her approval. I leaned on the counter. Linda, the contract is not valid. Sharon does not have the authority to block records requests. Linda bit her lip. I could lose my job. I know, I said. But if Sharon is faking violations, you are going to lose your job anyway when this goes public. Linda thought for a long moment, then nodded. I can give you 15 minutes. She unlocked a file cabinet in the back room and pulled out a stack of folders. These are the compliance files for the past 3 years. I flipped through the folders as fast as I could, citation after citation, all issued by Sharon. Most had no linked inspection report. Many had blank inspector fields. A few had dates that did not match the violation photos. I took pictures of every page with my phone. No readable text visible, just timestamps and metadata. Then I found the smoking gun. A folder labeled Peterson, J. James Peterson. I remembered that name. He had lived 3 streets over and moved out 2 years ago under strange circumstances. People said he got into a fight with the HOA and lost. I opened the folder. Inside was a citation for unpaid dues, a lien notice, and a foreclosure warning. The dates were all wrong. The citation was dated March 5th. The lien notice was dated March 3rd, 2 days earlier. You cannot file a lien before the citation. I checked the metadata on the printed copy. The lien notice had been created on March 7th, 4 days after it was supposedly mailed. Sharon had backdated the notice, so the cure window was already half gone when it arrived. James Peterson never had a chance to appeal. He paid the lien and moved out, probably to avoid foreclosure. I kept digging. Another folder. Martinez, L. Same pattern. Backdated notice. No inspection report. Blank inspector field. Another folder. Kim, S. Same thing. Sharon had been doing this for years, and no one had caught her because no one had reopened the cases. I took pictures of every folder, every citation, every backdated notice. By the time Linda knocked on the door and said my 15 minutes were up, I had evidence of at least 12 fraudulent citations. I walked out of that office with a phone full of proof and a plan. That night, I sat in my kitchen and connected the clues. Sharon issued fake citations. She backdated notices so victims had no time to appeal. She blocked records requests to hide the pattern. She used her role as election committee chair to manipulate ballots and proxies, which meant she controlled who could vote her out. And the management contract was never renewed, which meant she had no legal authority to issue any of it. The cold case was not just James Peterson. It was everyone Sharon had targeted in the last 3 years. I texted Jason, "I have the proof. What is the next step?" Jason replied immediately. "File a state procedure complaint. Force the HOA to respond. If they ignore it, you can take them to small claims and demand a full audit." I filed the complaint the next morning. The state HOA compliance office confirmed receipt and said they would investigate within 30 days. Sharon was going to hate that. 2 days later, Sharon showed up at my door unannounced. She had her portable folder organizer, her tiny body camera, and a clipboard. "This is a surprise inspection," she said. "Step aside." I did not move. "You do not have authority to conduct inspections. The management contract is not valid." Sharon's face went pale, then red. "Who told you that?" "I did the research myself," I said. "The contract was never signed. Every fine you issued in the last 3 years is void." Sharon jabbed her finger at me. "You are lying. The contract is valid. I have seen it." "Then show me the signature page," I said. Sharon opened her folder and flipped through a stack of papers. She pulled out a contract copy and held it up. "Right here." I leaned forward. "That is a blank signature line." Sharon looked at the page, and her expression faltered. "This is a clerical error. The real contract is on file." "No, it is not," I said. I checked. Management confirmed it. Sharon slammed the folder shut. "You were trying to disrupt the HOA. You were going to regret this." She turned and walked away, but I could see her hands shaking. If you are enjoying this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more HOA nightmare stories. That weekend, Sharon escalated. She posted cropped screenshots in the neighborhood group chat. The screenshots made it look like I had refused to comply with a valid inspection and threatened her. The group chat exploded. People who barely knew me started calling me a troublemaker. Paul texted me. "What is going on? Did you really threaten Sharon?" "No," I said. "She cropped the screenshots. I have the full email chain. It proves she is lying." Paul hesitated. "Can you post it?" I did. I uploaded the full email chain with timestamps showing Sharon had backdated her responses and edited the screenshots. The group chat went silent. Then one person posted, "Wait, so Sharon lied?" Another person posted, "This is not the first time. My friend got fined last year for something that never happened." The tide was starting to turn, but Sharon was not done. Monday morning, I got a call from a tow company. "This is Blue Line Towing. We have an order to impound your vehicle for unpaid HOA fines." I felt my pulse spike. I do not owe any fines. The citation was fraudulent. The dispatcher sighed. "I just follow orders." "We will be there in an hour." I hung up and called Jason. They are trying to tow my car. What do I do? Jason said, show them the unsigned contract. If they see the HOA has no authority, they might back off, but you need to move fast. I printed the contract, grabbed my phone, and ran outside. The tow truck was already pulling up. The driver stepped out, a big guy in a reflective vest. You the owner? Yes, I said. This tow is not valid. The HOA is operating under an unsigned contract. The driver squinted at me. I need to see proof. I handed him the contract and pointed at the blank signature line. The management company confirmed this was never executed. Every fine issued under this contract is void. The driver flipped through the pages, then pulled out his phone and called his dispatcher. I could hear Sharon's voice on the other end, tinny and angry. Hook it now. I already told you to hook it. The driver looked at me, then at the contract, then at the truck. He hung up. I am not touching this. If the contract is not valid, I could be liable for wrongful repossession. He climbed back into the truck and drove away. Sharon was standing at the end of the block, watching. When the tow truck left, she marched down the street, dragging her folder organizer behind her like a battering ram. You sabotaged my tow order, she shouted. I showed him the truth, I said. You do not have the authority to tow anyone. Sharon's face twisted. I have been running compliance for this HOA for 5 years. I know the rules better than anyone. Then you know the rules require a signed contract, I said. Sharon opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. That contract is a formality. It does not change my authority. Yes, it does, I said, and you know it. That is why you have been backdating notices and faking inspections. You have been running a fraud scheme, and I am going to prove it. Sharon stepped closer, and for a second I thought she might take a swing at me. Instead, she pulled out her phone and started recording. You just admitted you are trying to sabotage the HOA. I am going to use this as evidence. Go ahead, I said. I am recording too. And unlike you, I have timestamps that match reality. Sharon's hand trembled. She stopped recording, shoved her phone back into her pocket, and said, You are going to lose. I have all day, and so does my fine meter. Then she turned and walked away, her folder organizer swinging wildly. That night, I called a lawyer. Her name was Rebecca, and she specialized in HOA disputes. I explained the unsigned contract, the backdated notices, the fake inspections, and the tow attempt. Rebecca listened without interrupting, then said, You have a solid case. If you can prove Sharon issued fines without authority, you can sue the HOA for damages and force them to adopt a neutral enforcement policy. What do I need to do? First, file a small claims case for the $200 fine plus your legal costs. Second, request a full audit of all citations issued in the last 3 years. Third, show up at the next board meeting and make your case public. If the board refuses to act, the court will force them. I filed the small claims case the next morning. The court date was set for 6 weeks out. I also filed a formal audit request with the state compliance office. Sharon tried to block it, but the state overrode her. The audit was scheduled for 2 weeks before the court date. Sharon escalated again. She scheduled an emergency board meeting and tried to railroad a vote to ratify the unsigned contract retroactively. She sent the notice at 8 p.m. on a Wednesday for a meeting at 9 a.m. Thursday. I did not see the email until 11 p.m. I called Paul. Did you see this? Paul said, yes. She is trying to push it through before anyone can object. Are you going? I have to, I said. If she ratifies that contract, it could validate all her old fines. Paul agreed to come with me. We showed up at 9 a.m. sharp. The meeting was in the community center, a small room with folding chairs and a fold-out table. Sharon sat at the head of the table with her folder organizer and a gavel. 3 board members sat next to her, all looking uncomfortable. About 15 homeowners filled the chairs. I sat in the back with Paul. Sharon called the meeting to order and immediately moved to ratify the management contract. I have a motion to approve the contract retroactive to the original date. Do I have a second? One of the board members raised her hand. I stood up. I object. You cannot ratify a contract retroactively without a membership vote. Sharon glared at me. This is a board matter, not a membership matter. Sit down. I stayed standing. The bylaws require membership approval for any contract over $10,000. This contract is $50,000 a year. You need a vote. Sharon banged the gavel. You are out of order. Then she reached over and muted my microphone. Paul stood up. You cannot mute him. He has the floor. Sharon banged the gavel again. Security, remove these two. There was no security. The board members looked at each other, and one of them, a man named Greg, said, Sharon, maybe we should table this and let people review the contract. Sharon's face went red. We are voting now. All in favor? 2 hands went up. Greg and the third board member kept their hands down. The motion fails, Greg said. Sharon slammed the gavel so hard it cracked the table. After the meeting, I caught up with Greg in the parking lot. Thank you for standing up to her, I said. Greg shook his head. Sharon has been out of control for years. I tried to remove her last election, but she manipulated the proxies. Half the votes were fake. I need proof of that, I said. Can you get me the proxy forms? Greg hesitated. If Sharon finds out I gave you those, she will come after me. She is already coming after me, I said. We might as well fight together. Greg nodded. I will get you the forms. Meet me at the management office tomorrow. The next day, I met Greg at the office. Linda let us into the file room again. Greg pulled a box off the shelf labeled Election Records. Inside were proxy forms from the last 3 elections. Greg flipped through them. Look at this. Same handwriting on 30 different forms. Same signature style. These are all fake. I took pictures of every form. The metadata would prove they were all filled out on the same day, probably by Sharon herself. This is the evidence we need, I said. Greg closed the box. Be careful. Sharon is not going to let this go quietly. He was right. 2 days later, Sharon showed up at my workplace. I was in the warehouse, scanning inventory, when the front desk called me. Someone is here to see you. I walked to the lobby, and there she was. Sharon in her blue windbreaker, folder organizer in hand, tiny body camera recording. I need to speak with you about your unpaid fines, she said loudly, so everyone in the lobby could hear. You are disrupting my workplace, I said. Leave, or I will call the police. Sharon smiled. I have every right to collect on a debt. You owe the HOA $200 plus late fees. That is $400 now. I pulled out my phone and called the police non-emergency line. I have someone trespassing at my workplace and harassing me. The dispatcher said an officer would be there in 10 minutes. Sharon kept talking. You can call whoever you want. I am not leaving until you pay. The officer arrived in 8 minutes. He was a deputy sheriff, mid-40s, calm demeanor. What is going on here? I explained the situation. Sharon tried to interrupt, but the deputy held up his hand. Ma'am, this is private property. If the business asks you to leave, you have to leave. Sharon jabbed her finger at me. He owes the HOA money. That is a civil matter, the deputy said. You need to leave now, or I will cite you for trespassing. Sharon grabbed her folder and walked out, but not before shouting, I can fine you daily until you give up and you cry. The deputy turned to me. Do you want to file a report? Yes, I said. This is part of a larger harassment pattern. The deputy took my statement and gave me a case number. If she shows up again, call us immediately. I thanked him and went back to work, but my hands were shaking. Sharon was escalating faster than I expected. I needed to move faster. The state audit happened 2 weeks later. An investigator named Caroline arrived at the management office with a laptop and a box of files. I was allowed to sit in as a complainant. Sharon was not happy about that. She tried to block me from the room, but Caroline said, "He filed the complaint. He has a right to be here." Caroline spent 4 hours reviewing citations, inspection reports, and email logs. She pulled up the audit trail for the citation that started all of this. The citation was created October 7th, but the inspection date says October 9th. That is a 2-day gap. "How is that possible?" Sharon said. "The inspector filed a preliminary report." Caroline raised an eyebrow. "There is no preliminary report in the system." Sharon opened her folder and pulled out a handwritten note. "Here, this is the preliminary report." Caroline took the note and compared it to the digital record. The metadata shows this citation was created after the alleged inspection date. That means the inspection either did not happen or the citation was backdated. Sharon's face went pale. That is a system error. Caroline moved on to the next citation. Same pattern. And the next. Same pattern. By the end of the session, Caroline had flagged 18 citations as potentially fraudulent. She closed her laptop and said, "I am recommending a full membership vote to remove the current compliance officer and adopt a new enforcement policy with proof standards and a neutral appeal process." Sharon stood up, grabbed her folder, and walked out without a word. 2 weeks later, I had my day in small claims court. Sharon showed up with her folder organizer and a printed packet of every citation she had ever issued. The judge, a woman in her 60s, looked unimpressed. "Miss Evans, you are here to defend a $200 fine for a reinspection that allegedly took place on October 9th. Do you have the inspection report?" Sharon opened her folder and pulled out the handwritten note. "This is the preliminary report." The judge read it. "This is not a formal inspection report. It has no inspector signature, no timestamp, no photographs. Do you have the formal report?" Sharon hesitated. "The inspector did not file a formal report." "Then how do you know the inspection took place?" the judge asked. Sharon's face turned red. "I was there. I conducted the inspection myself." The judge leaned forward. "You are not a licensed inspector. You cannot issue a citation based on your own observation unless you are the designated inspector of record." "Are you?" Sharon said. "I am the compliance officer. That gives me authority." The judge flipped through the case file. According to the complainant's evidence, the management contract authorizing your role was never properly executed. Is that true? Sharon opened her mouth, closed it, and said nothing. The judge looked at me. "Do you have proof?" I handed her the unsigned contract. The judge reviewed it, then looked at Sharon. "Miss Evans, this contract is missing the HOA president's signature. That means it was never executed. Without a valid contract, you have no authority to issue fines. I am ruling in favor of the complainant. The HOA will refund the $200 fine plus court costs. Furthermore, I am ordering the HOA to conduct a full audit of all citations issued under your authority." Sharon stood up, shaking. "This is not over." The judge said, "Yes, it is. Court is adjourned." I walked out of the courthouse feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Paul met me in the parking lot. "You won?" "I won," I said, and the judge ordered a full audit. Paul grinned. "Sharon is done." "Not yet," I said. "We still have to get through the membership vote." The vote was scheduled for the following month. Sharon tried one last desperate move. She scheduled the vote on a weekday afternoon when most people would be at work. She sent the notice with only 5 days advance, the minimum allowed under the bylaws. And she controlled the proxy forms. I knew she was going to try to rig it. I called Jason. "We need to get people to the meeting in person. Can you help?" Jason said, I will call every homeowner I know. We need at least 50 people to override her proxies. We spent the next 5 days calling, texting, and knocking on doors. By the day of the vote, we had commitments from 60 homeowners to show up in person. The meeting was in the community center again. Sharon sat at the head of the table with her folder organizer, her gavel, and a stack of proxy forms. The room filled up fast. By the time the meeting started, there were 70 people crammed into a space designed for 30. Sharon called the meeting to order. We are here to vote on the state compliance officer's recommendation to remove me from the compliance role and adopt a new enforcement policy. I move to table this vote until we can review the recommendation in detail. I stood up. Point of order. The state already completed the review. We have the report. There is nothing left to review. Sharon banged the gavel. You are out of order. Sit down. Greg stood up. He is not out of order. We are ready to vote. Let's vote. Sharon looked around the room. Half the people were holding up phones, recording. She knew she was trapped. Fine, she said. All in favor of removing me as compliance officer, raise your hand. Almost every hand in the room went up. Sharon's face went white. She tried to count the proxy forms, but there were not enough. The motion passes, Greg said. You are removed as compliance officer effective immediately. Sharon stood up, grabbed her folder organizer, and headed for the door. But the wind picked up outside, and when she pushed the door open, a gust caught her printed packet. Papers exploded into the air, scattering across the parking lot. Sharon chased them, shouting, grabbing at sheets that floated just out of reach. People in the room started laughing. It was the perfect karma moment. The new enforcement policy passed unanimously. It required actual evidence before fines could be issued. It created a neutral appeal process. It required licensed inspectors for all compliance checks. And it banned Sharon from any compliance role for life. The HOA also voted to refund every homeowner who had been fined under Sharon's fraudulent citations. James Peterson got his money back. The Martinez family got their money back. The Kim family got their money back. 12 families total, over $30,000 refunded. I met with Jason and Paul at a coffee shop the next week. We won, Paul said. You took down an entire fraud scheme. I sipped my coffee. It was not just me. It was everyone who showed up. Jason nodded. But you reopened the cold case. You connected the clues. You caught the culprit. What is Sharon doing now? I heard she moved out, Paul said. Sold her house and left town. Good, I said. She needed to go. A few months later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from James Peterson. He had heard about the case and wanted to thank me for reopening it. He wrote, I always knew something was wrong, but I did not have the energy to fight. You fought for all of us. Thank you. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. The cold case was closed. The fraud scheme was over. The HOA had a new policy, and I could finally grieve my uncle in peace. The Ironwood Trails Village Association never apologized, but they paid. They paid the refunds. They paid my court costs. They paid for the state audit. And they paid with their reputation. Word spread through Duluth. Other HOAs heard the story and tightened their own policies. Sharon's name became a cautionary tale. I still live in the same house. I still clip my keys on a carabiner. I still track every timestamp. And if anyone ever tries to fake a violation again, I will know. Because I reopened the cold case once, and I can do it again. I appreciate you taking the time to listen.